I'm sorry that we ever got married. I'm sorry he cheated on me with you, and I'm sorry that I pretended to ignore it for as long as I did.
Okay, so for those who aren't familiar, that clip is of Natasha from the show Sex and the City. And I wanted to do an analysis on Natasha because clearly I have a video on my page already that addresses the dynamic between Carrie and Mr. Big. But more so, I wanted to focus on the initial stages of that connection and also honing in on their specific dynamic just between them two and what they had going on, the feelings that they harbored, and honestly, like the games that mainly Mr. Big was playing, but also Carrie played a role too. However, towards the latter half of Mr. Big and Carrie's connection, more tension became prevalent because there was a new element in the dynamic, and that was Natasha. So to give background on Natasha, Natasha is someone that Mr. Big met while he was out abroad and decided that he wanted to, propose to her, and they ended up, getting engaged. And Carrie found out about this officially, them following through with getting married at dinner or at a brunch or something with her girlfriends. And, one of her friends, I believe it was Charlotte, read it in a newspaper. And what's really interesting is Mr. Big did give Carrie a heads up at a quote unquote friends dinner or lunch or something like that.
It is serious. We're engaged.
But I think the reality really sunk in for Carrie when she realized that Mr. Big actually made it official with Natasha. And I think the reason why she was kind of apprehensive to believe that this relationship was serious, even though he did propose, was her dynamic with Mr. Big was polar opposite, where there was a lot of stringing along, there was a lack of commitment, and all of that was depicted in my previous video between Mr. Big and Carrie. Now, the reason why I want to make Natasha a muse is because really Natasha's character deserves justice. So no matter if Mr. Big was in the wrong in respects to Carrie, he was really in the wrong all around. Whether it be with Carrie or Natasha, Mr. Big was the culprit for the division. And in my opinion, I think that there was also a layer to him even choosing Natasha and her being significantly younger than Carrie, and I think even significantly younger than him. Well, I'm sure significantly younger than him. And I think it's because he made the erroneous assumption that it would be easier to manipulate Natasha, but Natasha was very wise for her years. But her age was, it was almost like a sore point for her relationship with Mr. Big, and Mr. Big thinking that he could run circles around her emotionally and mentally to where she wouldn't be able to perceive that there was something still going on between him and Carrie. But also with Carrie making Natasha's age a prevalent topic because she felt insecure about it. However, despite both of them using the age difference to their advantage or thinking that it could be used to their advantage, Natasha was kind of 10 steps ahead of both of them. So in this video, Natasha will be our main muse, but Natasha will be the muse in relation to her dynamic with Carrie. And I want to talk in this video about dealing with the obsessive, toxic ex of a romantic partner through an erotic and romantic envy lens. So without further ado, let's hop right in. So before diving deeper into the muse analysis, I want to give background information on what I mean by erotic and romantic envy, or rather assessing this analysis through an erotic and romantic envy lens by reading the section all about erotic and romantic envy listed in this book. And for those who have the book, it's on page 83. And it simply states, erotic envy is often prevalent in romantic situations, especially when one is presented with a love triangle. One may be in a predicament where they are dealing with a scorned lover, an envious partner of an ex, or a competitive romantic opponent. Under these circumstances, erotic envy should not be taken lightly, as it often results in legal consequences or trigger word, and I'm not sure if it's safe enough for me to say it, but nevertheless, the section also reads, when one is dealing with an envious individual whose envy is romantically motivated, there will often be an obsession with the target. It is common to witness the envious individual seemingly shapeshift into their target, whether it be changing their appearance to emulate the subject of envy, imitating the target's personality, getting the same or similar car as the subject, changing their profession to target's profession, attempting to get hired at the subject of envy's place of work, strategically befriending those in the target of envy's intimate social circle, and frequenting places they know the target of envy regularly visits. And this was prevalent on the show. There were multiple instances where Carrie tried to infiltrate into areas that she knew Natasha and Big were going to be present. But even when Mr. Big was gone and he was no longer alive, Carrie was going out of her way to figure out where Natasha frequented, local coffee shops. Also, she knew where Natasha lived. She was stalking Natasha even after Natasha and Big's relationship had ended. They were divorced and Natasha moved on. Carrie was still going out of her way to obsessively pinpoint what Natasha was doing and where she was at.
At a coffee shop? At my job? Where are you gonna hunt me down next, Carrie? In the showers at Equinox?
I swear this was a total coincidence. I never imagined in a million years you'd be all the way up here. This isn't even your neighborhood. Yes, I also know where you live.
What do you want from me?
As we can see in that clip, Carrie was still stalking Natasha even after Mr. Big was no longer alive, and even after Natasha moved on, as Natasha stated in the latter half of the clip that, she already had started another family and she had kids, which that was one thing Carrie wasn't able to successfully figure out or investigate. But Natasha clearly moved on. And one of the main reasons why Carrie felt this need to hunt Natasha down at this point, and I talked about this on my TikTok live recently, and I shared that when you're dealing with erotic and romantic envy, specifically a love triangle, a lot of the time the envious prospect, the envious individual, will also try to keep you reeled into that toxic cycle because they fear that you will move on and you will find someone better than the one that you both are entertaining at the time. And I think another thing to highlight too is Carrie envied Natasha the way that she did wasn't solely about Mr. Big, even though I think that was the catalyst for it. But as she became more and more familiar with Natasha and even successfully started to infiltrate in their marriage and had an affair with Mr. Big, she started to realize that Natasha had a lot of potential. In one of the scenes when Carrie had an affair, and it was because Natasha was out of town, she had an affair with Mr. Big in their apartment. She even said, almost in a form of pitying herself and feeling almost pathetic and worthless, that, well, while I'm out here scavenging for scraps and breadcrumbs from my ex who's married to someone else, she's off in the Hamptons, on vacation, living her life.
Love to my married ex-boyfriend on his lunch hour at his apartment while his 25-year-old wife was sunning herself at the Hamptons.
What?
Could I feel any more like a hooker?
Now, what's super dangerous about erotic and romantic envy is once the person who is envious of the target realizes that they're losing more and more favor with the person they're trying to get attention from or adoration from, or maybe not even favor, but in Carrie's case, like respect, or, being viewed in a high regard, that's when the obsession typically gets worse towards the target. And that's why that specific section in the book all about erotic and romantic envy is super important, because it highlights the dangers of taking this particular dynamic lightly, because it's filled with a lot of passion. There's a lot of emotions involved, a lot of ego, a lot of pride, very intoxicating emotional states that typically leads to negative consequences, such as stalking someone or putting someone in harm's way. But as I stated earlier, what was interesting about Carrie's case is it's almost like the harder she tried, the more negative results that she was getting. And I think that this is what led to her going full throttle with antagonizing and getting under Natasha's skin. So even once Mr. Big and Natasha were no longer together, Carrie was still defeated, which played a role in her still stalking Natasha after his passing, because even after he was long gone in his will, he gave Natasha a significant amount of money. even after they had gone through a divorce, she had moved on with her life. And that, yet again, made Carrie feel inferior.
Here it is, $1 million.
What's all the drama? What's the charity? Natasha?
And as the wise Nicki Minaj once said, play stupid games, win stupid prizes. So in this case, even with Natasha desperately wanting to sever ties and move on from Mr. Big and everything attached to Mr. Big, she still reigns superior over Carrie. And that's the price that you pay when you put yourself in a erotic, romantic envy dynamic. And the real reason why Natasha reigns superior is Natasha left. She knew her worth and she left. She let go and she never competed with Carrie, even though she had the right to. She had the right to assert her dominance and to assert herself as the wife, as the fiance at one point in time. She never did, and it's because Natasha had wisdom. She understood that the ball was always in Mr. Big's court, and the responsibility did not fall on her. And even though some people may disagree with this, the responsibility also did not fall on Carrie. Once Mr. Big and Natasha chose to settle down and become a union, they were responsible for honoring that union. And while Natasha did her part, she understood that she could not control how Mr. Big held up to those same standards. And because she accepted this reality and did not operate in delusion, it made it easier for her to take mental note and mental record of all of the times that Mr. Big was unfaithful, was disloyal, was lying, and was just like, you know what? I think I've collected enough experience and enough evidence to come to the conclusion this is not going to work. And she moved on and she was able to find a new relationship, have kids, and be happy in spite of that drama. And that's even prevalent with the last clip that I showed, as far as like Carrie meeting up with Natasha to talk about the will. Natasha was so detached from that toxic situation. She was desperately pleading, not even to Carrie, because she wasn't even thinking about Carrie, but she was pleading to the attorneys, and please stop contacting me. I don't want anything connected to Mr. Big, not even his money. While on the flip side, Carrie was desperately trying to hold on to that dynamic, even though she was no longer even a topic of discussion, not even in Mr. Big's will. So with that being said, Natasha is the perfect example of how to conduct yourself when you're dealing with erotic and romantic envy. You do not try to one-up the other person. You do not engage in competition with the other person. You simply get your ducks in a row to move on and live life, because you have options and you have brighter opportunities on the other side of a toxic love triangle. So that's all that I have for this video, and us doing an analysis on our beautiful muse, Natasha, from the show Sex and the City. And I also want to thank you for tuning in, but I also want to hear your experiences and your opinions in the comments section. Let me know what you think about Carrie's character, what you think about Natasha. Let's continue this discussion. Okay, see you guys in the next one.